Vince, I just came back from the county fair, and it is a time all across the Midwest. As a fellow Midwesterner, how important this time of year is to eat your fill of fried food, take a look at some lovely livestock, and then immediately come back to your basement and start talking about Dungeons and Dragons, right?
That's right. Now, I haven't been to a county fair in 25 years. I'm aware that it's happening. We have a big fairgrounds here in the town where I am. It's where both the state fair and the county fair happen or whatever. And I couldn't care less. It's not a thing for me.
Oh, I mean, to me, it ties directly, and it got me in the mood for the conversation that we're going to have today about all the playable things in D&D that you can play as heritages or races, as they were called historically, and the different characters. And there's no better place to see such a wide variety of real-world player characters than the county fair, my friend.
I knew that's where this was going. Yes, right away when you started. Yes, you saw many a varied heritage on display at the county fair, I'm sure.
Yes. I mean, and if there's anything that we want people to take away from this is a synopsis from this episode is that each individual, there is a wide breadth of individualities within any group. And the county fair is a good way to see, wow, there's a lot of people in this world.
You just understand that we as the human race contain multitudes. Yes, that is true.
Of vast multitudes. Absolutely. Yes. Which obviously brings us right into Thundercats, part of the news.
That's right. So yeah, we'll begin today with a little bit of news. We got 3 little news items for everybody. So first off, which is, John, were you a fan of Thundercats when you were growing up? Did you like Thundercats?
Thundercats ho, indeed. Yes, I was.
Okay. So was I. Big fan. I was a big fan of all of the sort of early 80s animated shows that were there to sell us cereal and toys and other things like that.
Absolutely.
But also, just this is a whole separate discussion. We will make a future episode out of this, which is blending sci-fi and fantasy and why people need to get off their stupid high horses about having sci-fi elements in fantasy and stop being weird, dumb purists for no stupid reason.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a hard line here. Like, I grew up with He-Man and Thundercats and Thundar the Barbarian and a bunch of other things like that. And, Panthro drives a tank. It's a fantasy world. People fight with nunchucks and claws and swords, and also they drive tanks around and have laser guns. So I'm just saying.
Right.
But anyways, there is a Thundercats RPG, more cogent to our little podcast and discussion, there's a Thundercats RPG coming soon from Lynn Vander Entertainment. Supposed to be launching here pretty soon, I believe next month. Wow. So yeah, the whole shooting match in one book, supposed to be like a 250-page book.
Okay.
So it's the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in reading like the depth of the character of Mumra and how he is planning to really bring it home as the ultimate arch villain in this. For sure.
He is certainly what's the challenge on Mumra there? He's going to be, you've got to be able to both defeat him repeatedly and multiple times, and yet he always escapes. It's challenging.
Yeah. I mean, going back to a recent episode where we talked about good and evil. I mean, come on, he's just the epitome. Like, I don't how you're going to delve into some the depth of character of your evil villain here is maybe Mumra just really actually just likes owning a bunch of kitty cats, and he's just a rescue. He's just trying to rescue animals, What
I loved about Mumra was that he could have just been an evil sorcerer, walking around looking how he looked most of the time, right? Uh-huh. But when he actually wanted to get into a fight, he was like, "Oh, check out these guns!" He just got ripped. He was
all the toilet paper just shreds off of him. I'm ready. Yeah,
I just love that. Any '80s bad guy had to also be ripped, right? That's great.
You can see the influences of early anime on these Western cartoons where it was done in bite-sized chunks that the Western audience could palate. And that's a prime thing that they beg, borrow, and stole, and to good effect, right? Everyone's got
that transformation's awesome. Yeah. Mumra had a magical girl transformation scene. Okay. Don't think any other way. He did. I think he deserves more credit for being part of one of the originators of the magical girl transformation scene in general.
I wonder if that's codified in the rules.
It should be. Round 1, he's transforming. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for evolution of bad guys.
Gotta pop that shirt off. Show the guns.
All right, what else you
got? Second little piece of news. So, are you familiar with the world in D&D of Eberron? John, do you ever played a game of Eberron?
I am familiar with Eberron. Yes.
Yes. I don't know how Keith Baker pronounces it, so I've always said Eberron. It might actually be Eberron. I've never heard him say it out loud. So Keith, when you watch this, just go ahead and say down below how it's pronounced, and thank you in advance. We look forward to having you on the show in the future, Keith. But at any rate, Eberron's always been one of my absolute favorite worlds to play in D&D since its release during 3rd edition. I just think it's an absolutely fantastic world. You know, he talks about how his original concept, his pitch for the world, was he pictured like this halfling femme fatale walking into the office of like a private eye who was a dwarf, and he was like, you know, the dwarf is sitting there self-narrating like all noir movies. He's like, she had legs up to, you know, gams that went for days, and like blah 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 blah, and he, you know, like he had a little wand in his desk drawer as like his gun, right? And stuff, and like it was all his original concept was very sort of noir inspired, and I'm a huge fan of yeah, I'm a huge fan of the noir aesthetic. So at any rate, I've always loved Ebron. One of my sort of intermittent monthly game that's going on right now is actually happening in Ebron. So I'm actually currently playing a game in there.
It's one of those that really, I think when you talked about the melding of sci-fi and fantasy,
yeah,
it does it in a very delicate way that
yes.
most people won't be upset with. But if you look at it, take 2 steps back, you're like, is that fantasy? Is that fantasy? No,
I mean, they have airships, which, by the way, I think is completely legitimate and real. I recently watched a video on Mystara. Okay. And I remembered how much I loved Mystara and how much of a great world it is. I think it's underrated and forgotten, and that's a shame. But at any rate, it certainly was the progenitor of a lot of these concepts that Ebron ended up picking up the mantle for. But I talk about this because Ebron has a new book coming out for 5th edition called Forge of the Artificer. And it was supposed to be out very soon. And John, the whole book got delayed because they had to basically go back and redo the cover. Apparently, there was some kind of printing error with the cover. I imagine this was not a cheap mistake, but the whole book got delayed until December. So
that's a pretty massive delay. It leads me to believe they were in way too far down the printing timeline than they should have been to catch this error.
Correct. I think we had a real issue here. Yeah, absolutely. The important thing also cogent to our discussion today is that Eberron is going to, so in Eberron, half elves are like a big deal, right? Like they have their own distinct culture and civilization. They're not just kind of intermittent things that occur. There's like half elves are a people, and they have relevance and marks and stuff like that, right? And so the half elf is officially coming back. And this is, I think, in my mind, one of the biggest mistakes of 5e 2024, whatever you want to call it, was they got rid of half elf and half orc. It's just stupid. And we're going to talk about, you know, fantasy species races, whatever you want to say, later today. And I think jettisoning those was absolutely boneheaded.
Right. Yeah, I was so confused. I remember the first time I was building a 5e character and spent like 20 minutes trying to find where I was missing it in the book to find half elf. Because I'm like, it's got to be somewhere. I go back and check the index. I'm like, God, I hate when they screw up the index and I can't find where I'm trying to find stuff, assuming it was there the whole time.
Yes, because it's been a concept for like, I don't know, ever.
Yeah, only one of the most memorable and beloved and key characters in the history of Dungeons and Dragons novels happens to be a half elf.
Well, what was his name again?
Tanis Half Elven.
Wow, weird. It's kind of in the it's like written on the tin. Yes.
Yeah.
I would also point out this goes all the way back to Lord of the Rings, like Elrond himself. But
that's right.
Sure.
Yeah, and we'll get into that today as well. So that's exciting that you know we get them back. You know, right?
Yes, it's a good thing.
I'm excited. I'm going to pick up this book for sure. It's like I'm always looking for it's like sometimes you just need to like add jumper cables to your thought process and coming up with a new campaign, a new world, and like getting a sweet new book on a setting you already have experience with and enjoy is like it's just like candy. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Eberron is great, I think. And again, this is probably a future episode, is talking about power centers. I think one of the things that makes a campaign world compelling is when there are lots of competing power centers at different levels. So, i.e., it's not just nations fighting, but also there's other, non-governmental organizations and stuff that also have power that the parties can be aligned to. I think they've cottoned to this recently, like when they added in the big factions that they wanted people to join in Forgotten Realms and stuff, like you can be part of the Zental Keep or blah, 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 the Lord's Alliance and all this kind of crap. This is what Planescape got right originally, right? This is what like Vampire the Masquerade figured out back in the 90s, right? Was that like people want to be able to identify with a group and then have some kind of stake in the world. It's immediate stakes. So at any rate, Eberron does that very, very, very well.
Yes.
Oh, okay. My last little bit of news before we get into a little optional segment is Critical Role. Which will, again, boy, these are all just teeing up future episodes because we'll do an actual play episode and our discussion, our thoughts and feelings on it in the future.
Oh boy, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, we got to figure out when we want to make people mad.
Oh no.
When do we want to see engagement go way up, but interest go way down?
Right. Yeah, we have to just see, like, we're just gonna. It's the old switcheroo. Just when you are excited about us is when we flip the script and you hate us forever. So
right.
Maybe we pull that
at any rate,
off soon.
Yes, Critical Role is teaming up with Ad Hoc Studios for multiple things, but most notably, like lots of different merchandising and stuff like that. But most importantly, a video game. So a full video game based on the exploits of the Critical Role crew. I don't know which campaign. I don't know any more details than that. That's all they've said.
I assume that this is like what was that old? Was it Dragon's Lair? That old arcade game where it was like a cartoon where you'd play.
Dragon's Lair was a cartoon video game. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So now that
it was a real quarter chewer because you died
exactly. Okay. I assume that this video game is not going to be like a RPG MMO or a RPG turn-based or a action RPG. I assume it's going to be the next generations of Dragon's Lair where you've got to sit through 700 hours of story and just stare at the screen and make dumb jokes with a bad accent every 14 minutes. And if you don't do it, it doesn't matter because the story keeps going. It sounds like our kind of game, right, Vince?
So look forward to our actual play episode. Jesus God. No, I assume it'll probably end up being like Baldur's Gate 3 would be my assumption, is they would model it on one of the most successful RPGs of the last ever. So,
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, I mean, hey, you gotta strike when the iron's hot, and the iron is obviously as hot as it's ever going to be for the Critical Role realm in terms of their IP, being able to cash in on that. And so I do not blame them. That's not like a backhanded compliment. I legitimately think like you never know when you're going to be able to have this opportunity again. And so I wish them all the luck in the world because I love good video games, especially RPG fantasy video games. So I hope it's amazing.
I agree.
Do you know anything about Ad Hoc Studio?
I don't. I'm not sure.
I had not heard of them, but it's entirely likely that they've done great things and I just am not aware, but the name doesn't ring a bell.
Hey, in the comments below, but if you know something about if they've made something you like, tell us what it is.
Tell us which gotcha mobile games that they're really famous for.
Yeah. So I'm interested. I like Critical Role's world. I have played in Exandria or whatever it's called. I don't know if that's like the name of the whole world or just the continent, but I played on that. They did that 5th edition book release and we played in that world. It was fun. I had a really good time. Cool. It's a compelling, fun world. There's nothing that's like that exceptional about it. It's funny, the continent we played on, the setup for it, which maybe that's Exandria. I don't know. Like that, somebody who's a real Critical Role fan, which I'm obviously not, is going to correct us in the comments and is like slamming on their keyboard right now angrily. But at any rate, that particular one in that book, the fascinating part about it was, have you ever watched Dragon Prince, the animated show on Netflix?
Yeah? Yes.
It's the same breakdown. Like left side of the continent is humans, right side of the continent is elves and everything else. And they're like divided down the middle by mountains and stuff. And, like they don't get along, and it's very like similar sort of raw world setup. So I had been watching Dragon Prince, and then my friend was like, "Well, let's play this game," and I was like, "Oh, this is familiar. Okay, cool. I got the vibe on this."
Oh, I know what's going to happen here. That's cool.
Yeah.
Hey, there is something to be said with being able to set up your world, set up the situation that the players find themselves in very succinctly.
Sure.
And sometimes it to a point where it's too basic or too obvious, and then you're like, oh, this seems really juvenile, and it doesn't have to be, but like you still need to be able to summarize quickly.
You got to be able to elevator pitch your world. Absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So, the players experience bits of story and bits of understanding what's happening in the world in really bite-sized chunks. And the more that you can make that easily palatable, the more you can build on it later. If you don't have that core, it's not going to happen. So I don't blame them for having that basic approach.
Yep. Right on. Okay.
All right,
well,
story
John,
time, Vince. Let's have some story time. Okay.
Story time, everybody.
Get your
Today's
s'mores
optional
out.
segment, exactly, is called Story Time. And what we're going to do today for our optional segment is we're each going to share one of our favorite character moments from the history of our gaming and what made it great and why. And I hope that this is advice for both players of how to lean into things and GMs for how to create these kinds of moments. Because I think it works. I think it takes both sides. Like truly great moments do not happen because of one or the other. It has to be. It's like it's Arnold and what's his name?
Carl Withers.
Carl Weathers. Yeah, thank you. Just like it's that moment from Predator, right? Like you gotta both be there together. Just the muscularity as you grip each other.
Muscularity.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes. And I will say that I can't speak for your story, but I have a feeling this is probably going to be the same case. But for my story, it wouldn't have had the impact. It wouldn't be the character moment if not for a partnership between player and DM to make it happen. Right.
So agreed. Yes. So absolutely. Okay. You want to go first this time?
Sure. Okay. So I guess one of my favorite ones that sticks out to me is when I read the Curse of Strahd campaign, the 5th edition Curse of Strahd campaign. And there's a point very early in the campaign where the players realize that souls that are pulled into Barovia, which is the country that the Curse of Strahd takes place on. So if you're not familiar, it's like surrounded by mist. You can't just leave. And the souls that are there, so the people that live within Barovia, they're trapped there. And their souls basically get recycled because sometimes new people come in, but it's not enough people to when all these people die in this horrible countryside. That how do we keep it populated? Well, the mists pull the people back in. And the main storylines is that Strahd is searching for his long lost love that died. And early on in the campaign, I think it was like the first town, Strahd visits one of these NPCs, a young girl in her like early 20s. Irina is her name in the book, and to suck her blood. The PCs went on from that moment. It was the way the story was set up was that it was just like to get you exposed to Strahd, to show you the kinds of evil things he's doing. He's sucking on people's blood and stuff. They didn't necessarily stop him because they weren't aware until the next morning, but they basically connected their entire goal, their entire story, their entire drive around protecting Irina and figuring out how she's a part of this story and figuring out how she connects with Strahd. Sure. In the book, she is a 1-paragraph character. She's got no stats. She is not important at all. She is there as a story moment. That from that point on, the entire campaign then revolved around Irina. And I knew because they were so attached to her even before they got to know her, that I made them just this connection. And they'd protect her. They'd take her with her. They'd hide her. They'd do all these things so Strahd couldn't find her.
Immediate anchor to the world.
Yes. And they had such drive. And the more they learned about who she was and grew to empathize with her and realized that she was, she was the way that you could tell the story of what was happening in Barovia because she had world experience from it. There was a point late in the campaign, this very key moment where Strahd is able to capture her back. And they then immediately, knowing that they weren't quite high enough level yet to go back to Shroud's castle, they said, we don't care. We're going anyway. We know we're probably going to die, but we need to save Irina. And they go into this moment where Strahd explains that Irina is the soul of his long lost love, and that she will never feel the connection to another unless in this life her soul connects with his, and he is no longer lonely. And then the shadow will lift slightly by him being reconnected with her. And so this entire time, they assumed he's evil. They assumed he was only there for destruction. And they assumed that Irina they were saving her. And then in this moment, they realized perhaps it's not all what we thought. And perhaps they even were considered, do we allow this to happen? Is this what's best for the world, for this generation of people? Is Irina going to experience a much better life than she would have in the mud down in this crappy little village?
Right.
And it set off the final part of the trilogy of the campaign of a true inner turmoil. And are they actually with Strahd or against him? And that was all based on players finding a connection, and then you as a DM finding ways to reward their connection to the world, whatever it is, and to make that the story. That is not at all the story, and it made my life hell in some ways, but so much more worth it in others, because I had to rewrite how the book was, what was the point,
right.
But based on what their goals and their desires were and what they considered victory in this world.
I love that. It shows the importance of, and I really don't think this can be, understated. Good NPCs that feel like rounded people that the players connect to are so important. But at a deeper level, it's hard to generate those and know who the PCs are going to attach to, beforehand, right?
Yep.
Like you can make somebody you think is fully fleshed out and real, and then the PCs just like blown by and they're like, okay, cool. Nice to meet you. Bye. Never want to talk to you again. Yeah. Right. But and I think that's just it.
It feels kind of, oftentimes we do it forcefully, where we require the PCs to go through the general of the guard, and he's the one that accepts their quests, and he's the one that shows them the town. And I don't want to be with this stiff. Screw this guy. I want the guy that's playing 3-card Monty in the alleyway. If that's the guy that they attach to, bingo.
Then that's the person they attach to. That's exactly right. And that's when, as a GM, you really have to listen for those cues of do they ask about the NPC? Do they ask to go talk to them? Do they ask if they've seen them recently, or where they're at, that kind of thing? Do they take an interest in them? When they're meeting them, do they ask more questions about them as you begin interacting? Right. Mm-hmm. So are they engaged? You got to watch for those signs, because that tells you this is an NPC that's got traction. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the one you should build out and integrate in. And yeah, even if it wasn't in your original plans, who cares?
Yeah, doesn't matter. Who
cares? Right?
Yeah. Yep.
So many times I've had NPCs that I thought were going to be throwaway, but then the PCs just took to them. Mm-hmm. Right? And I was like, well, this is a major character now. That's just happening.
Right.
Right.
And that is the biggest thing, I think, is do not attach your horse to the way your story is going to be delivered through any particular NPC or any particular situation. Know what the core of what you're trying to do is, and then allow that core to attach itself for whatever the PC is attached themselves to. And then it feels organic. I find that more often than not, my player characters, and then me even as a player, attach themselves to the quirky, attach themselves to the funny, attach themselves to the whatever. And what I found what really works is let them attach themselves to them. Let them be, they kind of endearing to them. And then you flip it on its head and you show the depth, and you show that this silly thing also has a part of their life that isn't great, and they've gone through struggle, and they're dealing with some nasty stuff, and that nasty stuff is related to your higher story. And so let them attach to the funny, little Jigglypuff or whatever the thing is that you put in the world. And then, make sure that Jigglypuff is a single mom and had her husband get killed.
Right. No, yeah, it's just revealing the layers. It's exactly what we talked about earlier, right? Like, yeah, everybody can be an onion, okay, and have those layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers.
Right.
Everybody's got layers. That's right.
All right,
parfaits, whatever you appreciate.
What's your story time moment, Mitz?
My story time moment, so many I could pick from. I really thought about this a lot, but I'm going to pick this one particular character. I've mentioned him before. His name's Cavwin. He's a paladin. He is my favorite character I've ever played. I played him over the course of 9.5, 10 years. It was a long time. And not regularly, we played him in marathons. Sometimes I would only get to play him once a year, but it was always good. From the beginning of that campaign, that character was in love with someone. Okay. Like he had this. Cavwin himself was sort of a failure. He was all of my own self-doubt and all of my own, what do I want to say? Like humiliation and fears, all of that put into a character. Everything I felt when I was young and didn't know how to talk to people and was very shy and all this kind of stuff into one character, a feeling like you're bad at everything, blah, blah, blah. But he had this from his backstory. He had this woman that he had run into who was very capable and confident and sort of everything he wasn't, and had like come into his life and introduced him to his religion. She's what effectively set him on the course of becoming a paladin, okay, of this particular thing, which is the blood of Vol in Eberron. By the way, this is an Eberron character, so it all connects. If you know the blood of Vol, then you know about what this is. But it's a very funny religion for a different day, but at any rate, it's hilarious to be a very good-hearted paladin of the blood of Vol. At any rate, so that character turned out when the DM got our backstories, I had named this NPC something. Like I just made this up whole cloth. By complete and total happenstance, another player who had written their own backstory wrote a similar confident NPC woman and named her the exact same thing. Like we both picked the same random name out of the universe. Okay. Like we had spelled it like 1 or 2 letters different, but it was the same name. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Like if you were speaking it, you wouldn't know you were saying anything different. Does that make sense if you spoke either word?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the GM saw that and was like, well, these are the same person.
Yeah.
You two knew the same person. Okay. And just built on that and made this NPC. At any rate, she was like a spy and a changeling and all this kind of stuff. And things happen, adventures happen. She goes missing. And my character's never worried about her because he's like, even though he's deeply in love with her, he's like, she'll be fine. She's the most capable person I know. And what ends up happening is we come to find out that she's been kidnapped by somebody in Thrain, in the capital, who's taken over and is like spreading disease among this like very sacred, holy place and blah, blah, blah. All these things go down. And so we have this big confrontation scene. And the GM who's running the sort of big bad evil person behind this particular plot presents my character with a very basic sort of threat, right? Of like, you can save her or you can save the rest of the city. So Green Goblin.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Classic Green Goblin conundrum.
Yes.
Okay. Wasn't exactly that straightforward, but that was basically what was going on, right? And like my character, without a doubt, without a moment of hesitation, was like her absolutely, and just sacrifice like and would sacrifice anything for her and be like, I'll save it all. It's like pulled the Spider-Man thing, like wrong. Your choice is false. I will save her and them, everybody.
Yeah.
And a whole big like bunch of insanity ensued, and it was like a really tense both conversation scene and confrontation and fight, and like it all happened, like it was everything. It was everything you'd want, right? This culmination of role playing and a big battle that went from like the depth of a dungeon through a teleportation up onto like battling on an airship over the city. Like, I mean, everything you'd want in like a sort of action movie, right? Or in a high stakes adventure movie. And so once we kill her, there's like this moment where we managed to obtain what she was using to create this like super disease. It was killing everybody. And it was like the Book of Vile Darkness, basically, like this artifact.
Okay.
And we realized we needed that same artifact to destroy the ultimate big bad guy. Okay.
Oh.
But one of us was going to have to read it, and the NPC was like, well, she was the only one who aligned up. She's like, I'll read it. The woman that I'm in love with, right? And so my character's like, okay. And so then the whole, I'll protect you. And so like all I'm doing for the whole trip is just like, as we're traveling, is sitting beside her while she's reading this horrible, awful artifact. And I'm just like keeping her safe. And it was this very quiet moment. And that whole little arc, right? This has all happened in like the span of 3 hours tops in real world time. Yeah. Okay. From like the beginning of that happening to sitting on the boat with her. And what made it so memorable was that it felt like an interaction with a real person, right? Like the DM had done a wonderful job, as you said, building up this NPC, making them real, focusing on the different elements of their life because they had connections to multiple players. There was like a lot to her, right? She had a life and a personality and interests and hobbies and things like that. And there was direct emotional attachment with my character. And so you had both like the depths of fear that you had like the all is lost moment to like saving the person to then realizing that the battle's not over, right? All in this span of like 3 hours. And I think what it showed, like what I would want people to take from this is one, like, don't be afraid to make the crazy story decision that you think your character would make. Like my character was being reckless in trying to save her, right? But it felt like the appropriate role-playing thing to do. And like, we just had to let the chips fall. Like there were consequences, but they were what they were. And I think it can be good to like be in your character so fully that you just make choices that sometimes are bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And two, for me to trust the GM enough that he wouldn't like ruin the whole campaign because I did that, right? That he would like provide consequences, but it would continue to evolve the narrative. So that's why I say when I think both sides have to handshake that, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's never, you're never making the most of what could be if you're giving the players 2 options or 3 options, and one is the obvious one, so they always take the obvious one. You're not giving actually any options. You're giving the illusion of options, and it's a really thinly veiled one. And players just don't ever feel any tough decisions. And they also need to feel that in the situation where they're like, look, my character would make what is maybe most people wouldn't make or shouldn't make in this decision. And to know that like, it's just not all worse now. Everything's worse. Your choice was bad.
Right. And you just feel like punished for the rest of the campaign. No, it wasn't that, right?
Yeah. They should feel that something's changed based on your decision, but it should not strictly just be punishment. And so that was great that you were able to get through that, and obviously not unscathed, but you got to feel
exactly.
that experience.
And then the last part is just like, don't ignore the quiet moments. Sometimes just like describing some quiet, simple moments that your characters have can be very emotionally impactful, right? That stuck with me, of me just sitting there with her while she's reading this horrible artifact. Like it's nothing happening, right? There's nothing actually materially happening in the plot or the story at that moment, right? But I remember it years later because it felt like the appropriate culmination of all the stress from the previous scene. So like, I think a lot of times we finish adventures and we're just like, we race to the next thing. Don't sleep on that. Don't sleep on the quiet moments between. That's what I'd say.
And you get that's where you can really feel the weight of the decisions that you've made too. And the decisions that your NPCs have made, where you have to sit in it for a moment, and the uncomfortability and the ominous knowing of what we've done and what needs to be done. And like typically in these, in the stories that are most memorable to us, there's the moment before the thing that is the pinnacle, right? It is the moment before Frodo throws a ring into the mountain, where that final climb, where he and Sam are in that final climb, and you can even see the little archway that will lead in, and it's glowing red. And that last bit of this whole journey, we've done all this stuff, and that's just like quiet, trudging, ominous feeling of what needs to be done. Is like,
and then the moments after that in the House of Elrond, right? Like that's just as important. Like those quiet. That's why Yes, everybody makes fun of like the Return of the King for having like 17 endings, right? But that's them actually getting all of those quiet moments and important moments after the culmination of the story down. I think those things matter, right?
Yeah, you got to do the world tour. You can't just like let these characters go. We've just spent 12 hours with them over the course of 3 movies, and you can't tie up in a cute little bow. And Tolkien didn't. So
Right.
you had to like give that breath. And I always say it's one of the more difficult things to execute on as a DM, but managing the ebb and flow of anxiety and push and lows and highs. And what you're talking about is not lows. You're talking about that middle baseline that feels the most uncomfortable.
Yep.
We always think like the graph needs to be nothing but zigzags.
Right.
And those
no, sometimes it can just be flat, like normal, like a quiet moment. Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Because it's so hard too, is like that, again, going back to when we talked about like campaigns and stuff, that the downtime, right? The time between, if you literally were just like fighting all day, every day, it's like, well, no, you just die or become exhausted immediately. Or like they actually have a life. They actually have the reasons why they're doing the things that they're doing. Let's spend some time and breathe in that for a little bit. And that sometimes that's where some of the biggest growth and the biggest aha moments and the biggest developments in characters and relationships happen. And if you don't give that breath, you never give the opportunity. And that's something the DM is 100% in control of, because they manage the speed of which things are taken.
And I can tell you, here's the very easy test to know whether or not you're giving your PCs enough options outside of whatever the core adventure is to pursue their interests. Just when they have a downtime day or 2 or a week or something, ask them, so what are you guys doing? What do you work on? You got some downtime? What are you working on? And if you get silence back, then you haven't given them enough options and built on enough of that stuff that they should be ready to pursue it, right? Like if you've properly engaged with them on the whole, on the wholeness of the experience, then they will come back to you with like, well, I want to build this thing I've been working on crafting. I want to research this thing. I want to make this new spell. I want to do this thing. I want to work on this business. I want to build our house. I want like, right. Yeah. And you don't need like, yes, some systems have downtime rules for that crap and stuff like that. I don't care. It doesn't need roles. You can just, it's fine. Like it shouldn't be a rolling thing. That's why I kind of hate downtime systems. Or like, I want to go gambling and cruise. Like, okay, I don't need roles for that. Cool. Let's just do that. You do that.
Yeah. Your currency is not the success on a dice roll. Your currency is the limited time you have in downtime and what you're choosing to invest it in.
Exactly.
Right? No matter what that is, you should probably have some modicum of success. And the more you like look forward to and spend the next downtime and the downtime after that, I'm going to add a garden plot on the back in our backyard. I'm going to put a astrology tower up next. I was like, you've chosen to do that, and you should be rewarded for that,
right.
You have,
exactly. You're expending a limited resource, the most limited resource, time.
Yep. Yeah. Right. And so that's it. There are some points where I've had them, you get to a certain level of their ask after they've invested a lot of time. And, oftentimes that goes into decision making on how they choose to build and even play their character based on their decision of time usage and downtime. That they get to a point where they really want to push what they're capable of being able to, whether manufacture, research, all that kind of stuff that really does kind of get into the nuts and bolts of game mechanics. Then sometimes I'll have them do rolls, but only after they've obviously put a bunch of effort and time into something and say, okay, you already have here's some great fruits of your labor. However, maybe you come up with an amazing new spell that you've combined to others by all of your research and your giant library that you've created or whatever. Like I want to reward you for that. However, it's not automatic, and maybe you screwed up and you actually created a different combo spell. And so you still get something, but it wasn't exactly what you thought. Maybe it's better, or maybe it's weirder, or maybe it makes you think about things differently for a new option you have in situations in the game world. So
totally. All right. With that, let's segue into our main topic, John.
Yes.
As we're segueing, hey, don't forget to, like this if you're watching it somewhere and subscribe and do that kind of stuff. Don't forget to hit those little buttons and engage. We appreciate it.
We do.
That's our reward. We thank you for you choosing to spend your most valuable resource, which is time, with us.
Oh, look how you pulled that right back in.
Here to help. Pure professional over here. All right. So what I wanted to talk about today, John, I want to talk about fantasy races or species
Okay.
or heritages or whatever. Look, I'm not going to get caught up in the discussion of what these things are called because that's all stupid and I don't care. Okay.
Right.
Great. We can just move by that. So, like, we all know what we're talking about here: elves and dwarves and right?
Yep.
We've mentioned Tolkien already in this. On one hand, classic. You got your elves, you got your dwarves, you got your hobbitses, right? You got orcs.
Yep.
Okay.
Orcs.
And goblinses, right?
Yep.
Okay. All these are kind of just those are kind of the things that occupy Tolkien's world. Drawn very strongly from Northern European and Nordic fantasy races, right? Like those kinds of things. And it's because of that, because Tolkien was such a foundational text, right? For all of modern fantasy, it became the template that so much so like the generation of writers that grew up reading Tolkien then went on to write their own fantasy books, and most of them would just basically include a lot of the same elements, right? Certainly in early D&D, this became the template, right? But it wasn't just that if you go back to Appendix N, they were drawing on a lot more than just Tolkien. They were drawing on the fantasy authors of the 60s and 70s who were all themselves inspired by Tolkien and other like things like this, right? And so you just got it became the sort of assumed baseline, this one thin cultural sliver of elves, dwarves, hobbits, halflings, whatever you want to call them, right? Orcs, maybe half elves, half orcs, whatever. And then somehow gnomes snuck their way in the mix. Okay, they got in there. A lot of people still hate gnomes to this day. Okay. And that sort of just became like the assumed baseline of, oh, that's the normal stuff.
Sure.
Okay. We mentioned that on one hand. Now, on the other hand, we mentioned Eberron. Okay. And talks about how we like that world. Well, Eberron certainly has all those things. They're all present. But also, like, gnolls are a mainline race or species that you can play and interact with. And so are hobgoblins. And so are
Warforged.
Warforged, yes. Robot people, right? Yeah, that's a big one. Changelings, which is like small doppelgangers, basically, right? Like reduced power doppelgangers. Shifters, which are like reduced power werewolves. Kalishtar, which are reduced power interesting things that have been put into like take something interesting and then reduce it down and you get a Kalishtar, for example. I think Kalishtar are absolutely stupid. I've never found them interesting, but at any rate, they're just like psychic people who don't sleep or dream or whatever.
And then you get into things like the Celestials, which are just powered down angels, and
Aasimar, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Your Aasimar and your Tieflings, yes, both came in at some point. That's right. You've got powered down angels and powered down devils, right? You've got tranches of animal people that have come in through there.
So many animal people. Many animal people.
Aarakocra for your bird people, but that's, turtles for your turtle people.
Just turtle with a different vowel.
Sure. Tabaxi for cat people, although they're not the only cat people. There are more than one cat people.
There's a lot of cat people. Yeah.
Lupin for your dog people. Arachidna, I think is what they're called, for your spider people. Those are really fun. So and on and on and on and on and on.
And on and on and on and on and on.
But we always return back to the foundation. Okay. So John, how do you feel about this in general, right? Like this elf dwarf social cachet that's just gotten indelibly imprinted onto our mindset that like, oh no, those are normal fantasy races. And this other stuff is weird. Like elves and dwarves aren't weird. Okay. Those are totally normal. But the dog person is like a step too far. That's insane. Okay. Hit me.
Yeah. I mean, elves and dwarves are relatable compared to a human in that they don't look that much different. So, it's like, oh, well, this is our first introduction and just show you. It's easier when the differences are more minor and easy to kind of explain. And then otherwise,
it's a person, but it's a dog is pretty easy to explain.
I mean, how? Well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess sure. I mean, again, I'll go back to the Pokemon thing. Like, I mean, Mewtwo is just like, he's like a person, but he's just psychic person. He doesn't talk. I mean, how's
He's
that
also like
different?
a cat,
Sure, you said
sort
cat
of
people.
mouse,
So,
Swedish
I mean,
steam cooker. I don't know what he is, but yeah, sure, I get what you're saying.
My thought on this is that I'm not saying that there are specific boundaries, and if you want to be fantasy, you got to play within these boundaries. And if you're not playing within these boundaries, it's not fantasy. That is the goal. That is the joy of fantasy, is that
Sure,
it's in the term, it's in what we're doing, is that it's fantastical. It's not the real world. It's to the limits of our imagination. So in that regard, none of these should be a concern or an issue. I just think that going back to Tolkien, we have what I describe as a universal language, an understanding of almost of culture or society, of what is fantasy. And we can all speak on the same baseline of understanding and known history and shared experience through the movies, the TV shows, the books, everything the RPGs we've played, that we can jump onto the same page very quickly with some of these things. With dwarves, okay. I say dwarf, you picture dwarf. That doesn't mean that they all fit into this box, but if they don't fit into that box, it makes them interesting because we have a baseline understanding of what we think of as a stereotypical dwarf, what we think of as a stereotypical elf, and so on and so forth for goblins and so forth. And so then we can quickly get to the depth of the individual, the depth of how this village or society is unique, what makes this group of elves interesting and different, because we all have a shared understanding.
Oh yeah, God knows we can have 17,000 different permutations of elves that each one has their own little unique culture and thing that stands apart. Yes. Oh, yes. I'm very aware.
Yes, because we all have the baseline understanding. And when I say we have the baseline understanding, I mean like us as humans in this world that are nerds have the shared history of understanding of how things work. It's not dissimilar to saying we're playing a real like a present day RPG that takes place in 2002 in the Bronx, New York. Now,
okay,
as long as we were roughly the same age to be aware of the world, we understand where our society was. We understand basically what New York was. There is a shared understanding of the size of the city, the kinds of people that live there. They're not too far removed from 9/11. However, the cloud of it is not under us. We understand what technology was used at that time.
I was wondering if you were going to get to that reference, by the way. I was like, he picked a very particular year.
It's all like a social construct, an understanding that as human beings, especially like, okay, we're Americans, right? So we have this shared cultural understanding of things that gives us a springboard that we don't have to delve into the depth of what I'm talking about to even get a baseline understanding of what any of this means. We can quickly jump into the deeper end, what makes it interesting, what makes the story worth telling, what makes your character unique, instead of just, what the fuck are cat people? Can we explain this so we all understand what we're talking about? Because there's no historical like precedent for it. And that's where I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm saying you have to be prepared to make sure that there is depth, and that depth is shared for each of these races in the game that you're running. Just saying, you go down the street into the market and there's 17 different races there, and you're just like, yeah, it's a busy market. These kinds of people you're used to them as a child, and this and that and the other.
Sure, it's not weird. Yeah.
It's not weird to you. You're used to seeing that. Cool. Awesome. All right. But if you're having a player character in your gameplay one, then we all need to have a baseline understanding of the society, of what's unique about them, what is the social understanding, whether it's being too generalistic or not, of the kinds of people that they are, what is their typical, what are the things that they're good at, where do they usually live, what kind of society do they live in, all these kinds of things that everyone that's playing at your table needs to have a baseline understanding of, that so we can move on to the individual, instead of we're just like making these vast assumptions that if you don't do that, then you're just like all people like that are your bird people race are all exactly like you. And then you're playing a stereotype, you're not playing an individual. And that's my struggle with it. My individual struggle when it gets too much.
Sure. Okay. I got a lot of thoughts.
Okay. I laid it all out there. So I'm ready for your
That's fine.
Take
it's all good. That was good. Good rant. Look, there's a whole, let's be honest here. There's a segment of the fantasy, RPG player base that thinks like even gnomes are a step too far. Okay. Sure. Like like if you're not what a proper D&D party looks like is 2 humans, an elf, a dwarf, and a halfling or something.
Sure.
Right. And like anything that deviates from that is just wrong. Obviously, that's extreme.
Again, going back to Tolkien, like you need the proper ratios.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Like they would be upset if the ratio was wrong, right?
Right.
Like that these people are out there and they're vocal, right? There's a section of like Grognard or whatever, people who think like that. Okay. And then there are people who, well, frankly, I know them well because they are me. Like my top 4 characters in the history of me playing role-playing games, okay, are a human, a rogue modern. Okay, so a little talking box. Yeah,
you're a geometric shape.
Correct. That is right. Okay. I was a cube specifically. Okay. Right. A grung. Do you know what a grung is?
No, don't have the slightest idea.
It's a frog person.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
All right. And a lupin. Do you know? I mentioned lupin earlier. It's a dog person.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. My top 4 favorite characters were these 4 things. Okay. Okay. Because they happened to be the best characters. It had nothing to do with the fact that they were, in fact, the modern, anytime you play a modern, it is just a unique experience because they are so weird. But like certainly was influenced there. But the other 3, it was just like the grung wasn't great because he was a grung. He was great because of who he was. Here's my issue. You talk about like assumptions, right? Cultural assumptions. Okay. Having a baseline. And my pushback to that is like, I don't know, is that true? Like when I move through the real world, I meet people of diverse and different backgrounds, right? Like if I meet somebody from Azerbaijan, okay, or when I was growing up, one of my best friends was from Laos. Okay. I know literally nothing about Laos to this day. Okay. Like, I'm sorry if we have any Laotian viewers, I apologize. Please, you can direct me to resources. My point was I didn't know anything about the culture of Laos. Right. That was where my friend was from. And like, I didn't know him as somebody who was from Laos. I knew him as my friend, right?
Sure.
Who had certain qualities and traits and was very funny, but very dry and like incredibly witty, but never showed emotion and just like yada, 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 yada. Always played very funny D&D characters. Like I played a lot of D&D with this kid and was always secretly a bard or something like that. Like would never, like always pretended to be a wizard or a fighter, but was probably playing a bard, just like little picadillos and stuff like that. Like I didn't need to know anything culturally about it. Now you might say, well, okay, he was human. We're all humans. We all have cultural assumptions about humans. This is slightly different when you're dealing with effectively aliens.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. If your friend wasn't from Laos, he was a toad.
Sure.
It's a different conversation.
Which is fair. But I mean, like, my point is in the world you're describing, like in a D&D world, right? To some degree, you're talking about cultures because if elves aren't elves, I'm not making an assumption about elves. I'm making an assumption about the Qualinesti elves or the Kaganesti elves, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
That's just Laos.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Because and so my point is that like I don't know that it like yes, sure, there's shorthand of like, oh, I'm playing against type. Yeah. Which is part of I think what you're talking about, right?
Right.
Like dwarves are gruff and live underground and or whatever and are greedy or have stone cunning or whatever, things like that, right? And so when you play the dwarf that's like Peikel, right? The little druid, That's like interesting because it's against type. So that does, when you have an expected cultural baseline, it does let you play against that type and make that the foundation of your character and have it be memorable in an interesting way. So I don't disagree with that, right? There's value to that. I'm just saying I don't think it is necessary. Like you can play something that's very unusual. When I played that Lupin, I was in a party of just like a bunch of humans and dwarves and elves, like a very standard D&D party. I was just a dog person.
And there's just a pug in the corner whose eyes are looking both different directions.
I was a French poodle. Thank you very much.
Jesus Christ. Oh, no.
I had the little ball ears. I very carefully manicured my ears.
Right.
And had an outrageous French accent.
I assume this was based off of Sir Didymus of Labyrinth fame, right?
No, it really wasn't. It really wasn't. It was just like I was sitting down thinking about it. I grew up, my parents had a little French poodle and like a little toy one or whatever. And so when it came time, I was just like, oh, that'd be really funny. Right? That was it. That was all it was.
It would be great if you were a little poodle man that also rode a regular dog as a mount. I'm just saying.
Sure.
These jokes write themselves. This is great. This is
of course.
Great. Yeah, like there's two sides of that. One is like you have to understand the cultural, universal understanding and expectations or whatever of a group. And then
I'm saying that can have value, but it's not necessary. Right? Like you can still be interesting without it.
Here's my flip.
Okay.
If you're not doing that,
sure,
then I think what you need to do is make sure that the character feels unique for who they are, the race being a big part of that, their heritage being a big part of that. So your poodle man meticulously taking care of his ear poofies makes it so that character, intrinsic to how he interacts with the world and how others see him, is core to the heritage that you chose. The issue is, so often when we don't have an understanding of who these heritages or races are, we don't know how to approach the world. So then what was the point? What was the point of playing something if you played it and the heritage didn't actually matter? If it didn't actually come into play, what's the point? And so often it's like, well, we have 25 options in the player's handbook now for you to choose from a bazillion different things and one paragraph on each of them. But more importantly, let's look at what 2 stats you get +2 to and which racial you get. Oh, look, you can fly for 2 minutes a day. Guess what I'm going to pick? That's the problem that I have, is that it's like we're just adding choice that doesn't actually see itself on the table for any good reason. We don't actually play that character. Again, this is going into like investing in how you're playing, but giving us a bazillion options just drills down to, do they matter? Right.
Sure. Okay. I got 2 things I want to say on this. All right. And I'm trying to decide what order to do it in. So I'm just going to throw both things out there and then we'll take them. Okay. Number 1 is I want to understand why this matters in fantasy and it doesn't matter in sci-fi. Okay. And I will unpack that in a second.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Because it doesn't.
We just assume they're all silly looking aliens because Star Wars taught us they're freaking everywhere and it doesn't matter.
That's exactly where I was going to go. I was going to go to Star Wars.
Yep.
Okay. Like, yes, there are some aliens that have cachet in our heads in Star Wars, like Twi'leks have become pretty popular, right? And like people know and like Twi'leks. They're like a recognizable thing with their little head tendrils, whatever, right? Yeah. And so on. But there's like weird aliens just bouncing all over in Star Wars. We don't ask questions. They just show up and, come into the picture and interact. And it's like, yeah, sure, that's a weird 4-armed alien that owns a diner. Like, I don't need to know anything about him. I don't know what I don't care what alien species he's part of or whatever. Okay. And like, my point is, it doesn't matter at all. I need no expectations. When Chewbacca showed up, okay, in the first Star Wars, Chewbacca's there. You might know stuff about Wookiees now, but that's all been backed in after the fact. Right?
Yeah.
When you met Chewbacca, our introduction to Chewbacca that matters is he's big and he says, let the Wookiee win. Why? Because the other kind won't rip your arms off. Right? And you're like, okay. Character introduced in a very efficient manner. Right?
We have let you know something about this species.
Or just, yes, like there he was making a cultural statement, right? That like all of the species are like this. They're big. Wookiees will rip your arms off, right? And so my point is that you don't need much to go off of. If this can work in sci-fi, where clearly it does, and we don't care, right? Like you flip up a sci-fi RPG and it's got just like Zubelbots and, you know, Jingle Whatsits and every other Dr. Seuss race. You're not like, well, I'm not playing any of these. That's weird.
It's
right?
almost weirder to play the human in the sci-fi. Right. It's like, you know, all these options you chose a white guy? Like, ah, that's weird.
Right. Like Battletech is the weird sci-fi world because it's the one that says we went out into the stars, explored the galaxy, and it was empty. It's just us.
It's just us.
Right.
We took that time and made robots instead.
Yeah, like that's exactly. that's the unusual case, right? Okay, so that's number one.
I have a quick retort or questioning on that.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily have an answer. I think the difference is, and this is not having done a lot of research myself, is the point of sci-fi games in general is the vastness and the unknown, right? It's kind of core to science fiction, you know, ever since Star Trek, the great unknown. And we know that if our paths cross with something wild, weird, way over the top, as Star Wars shows us, the more over the top that it is, the more it helps us understand how vast and wide the universe is and how insignificant we are. We don't need to understand that because it's so huge. We couldn't possibly understand all the beings that we may come across. We're playing on one planet, oftentimes one continent. Oftentimes, the generations that we grew up in with people that told us tales, that was people that traveled through our hometown, people my grandma would mention, the guards talk about this, that, and the other. We have a baseline of understanding that's smaller. It's more compact. It's more digestible because our world and what our characters would be experienced to is smaller. And so that's, I think, the differentiator.
Sometimes if I'm in Sharn in Eberron or Waterdeep in the Forgotten Realms, there's like, or even the real example, Sigil in Planescape, like then all bets are off, right? I'm in a planar metropolis, right? This is the most cosmopolitan places in the multiverse. Like these are connected to other planes of existence, to everything, right? Like I shouldn't find it unusual to see anything walking down the street in any of those places.
Yeah, well, you stepped over to the sci-fi bridge then, really. I mean, you put a fantasy coat of paint on it, but then if you look at enough of the core of what's happening is more science fiction than fantasy.
I mean, there's no laser guns. There's no whatever we're defining science fiction. There's no technology. I don't have aluminum or nuclear power.
Well,
right?
Neither did Ewoks, my friend. Neither did Ewoks.
Sure. And like, sure. I mean, to some degree, obviously. And like, I'm sure there's people who are going to say, well, yeah, but Star Wars is very fantasy and it's very fantastical sci-fi. True. I agree. But like Star Trek will pull the same trick. Yes, there are alien races we have established cultural baselines for, Klingons, Romulans, Cardassians, stuff like that, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, we meet all sorts of weird aliens, and it's like just some rando alien. It's like, this is the first time we're meeting them, and we'll never see them in the series again, probably. You know, like that's fine.
Yeah, that happens. That happens a lot.
And that's all fine. So let me advance an alternative theory as to why it's okay in sci-fi and not okay in fantasy. There's no text.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is no single Lord of the Rings equivalent for sci-fi. There are very popular sci-fi books, right?
But they're all relatively recent.
Well, or just like none of them hold this singular place in the imagination that Lord of the Rings does for the fantasy genre, right? For the fantasy subgenre.
Right.
That's my argument. Okay.
Yeah, the family tree for sci-fi, although it does go back, and there are some core starting points.
Sure, arguably to like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, clearly, and you know.
Right. Yeah, and Hubbard and stuff like that. But those they don't so strictly define what boxes we put things into like Tolkien did. Right. And therefore it's not the expectation, and it's not the building off point. It's more of the kind of ethereal, like, ephemeral feeling of science fiction is the core that everything was built off of, not the literal.
Yeah. And so I think that's part of what sets this aside and makes it a different experience. Okay. Let me say the other thing there that I think is relevant. There was a whole article they wrote a long time ago about that was in, like, I think maybe Dragon Magazine, or maybe it was, maybe they only did it to the website. It was a really good article and it stuck with me. It was about like traction. What species or races gain traction? Okay. Because let me give you an example. Drow, dark elves, right, are not something that comes from Tolkien fiction, right? I mean, yes, they're elves, but like drow as created are a thing that are more recent, and they have traction, right? Like drow art became very popular, right? We mentioned Warforged and Eberron, or we could do Dragonborn. I think all of these are like newer inductees into the fantasy canon that most people have come to accept, right? Again, yes, I understand there's always a segment of the population that resists anything new, but like the reality is those are very popular choices and species, right? Because they got traction. And what this article was looking over was trying to figure out when does a species get traction and when doesn't it? Because as game designers, they wanted to make stuff that got traction and introduce new options that did. Okay. And so the examples they gave were like Drow, Githyanki, and Mog. Okay. So Drow is obviously one of the most successful ever. It's obviously just a step away from elves, so it's pretty easy to understand why it gained traction. You also had things like Dritz and stuff like that, right? So you had a very easy story. It's compelling in a lot of ways. Okay. Githyanki, I think within the crowd that is people who've been longtime D&D players, certainly Baldur's Gate 3 introduced people to Githyanki in a whole new way, right? Through Lizelle. I think people like Githyanki, and they were pretty successful. They're not like a crazy popular species, but like Spelljammer, Planescape, they're around. People know them. People generally like them. All right, right? Like Githyanki, Githzerai, that kind of thing. Do you remember Mog? Do you know what this is?
No.
Okay. They're stone people from Archeron.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. They had a really cool picture. I thought they were neat. I played a Mog. Of course I have. And like they talked about how the Mog failed to gain any traction. Nobody liked him. Right. And so to me, it's always interesting, like of all those animal people that we mentioned, why did Aarakocra and Tortle be the two that have actually like kind of stuck around? But like no one's talking about playing a Lupin. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever. Like the dog person went away, but the turtle person stayed. Okay.
I mean, I think going back to traction, I think that's one of the issues that you have is it, like we've seen it in more modern RPGs, is they don't try to support to build up traction. It's felt more like they throw a dozen at the wall and they're like, let's just see which ones they like. And then we know, like, we're their play testers on what's cool or not. And then you just have this sea of things and they all kind of blur together to me. And so I don't find myself being able to more quickly adhere to something to sink in because the options are vast. And when you have so many options and they're so kind of like off the wall, it makes it feel a little bit more ridiculous to me rather than if it was just, two in there and be like, oh, okay, that's an interesting Raven society. And I get this. And they treasure, they live in, these high, nested villages and stuff. Like I could get to that, to get invested, to get traction. I can't find myself getting there as easily.
Yeah, I don't like. Ultimately, I think it's some confluence of events, some lightning in a bottle that decides what has traction and what doesn't in the imagination of people, right? Like, and it's some threshold because everything we've talked about, from ASMR, like Tieflings, introduced later, had incredible traction, right? People love Tieflings. What was Karlach, right? Is the name of the Tiefling in Baldur's Gate, right? People love Karlach. Okay, and like Tieflings as a concept, introduced way back in like the late 80s, obviously became formalized in Planescape as one of the sort of main options, and then just rode for a while, right? It just became a pretty popular option. Why did it stick? Because being a devil person, in my mind, like it's cool, right? You're a little bit of a bad boy or bad girl. It has the power fantasy of like the devils and the lower planes in your hand. right?
Yeah.
So like when there's some obvious power fantasy that feels interesting and like it's got good angles, to me that's sort of one of the things. But like I couldn't tell you why one of those worked really and why another one didn't, right? Like why did A work and not B? I don't know.
Well, they're all a half step, right? You don't
Sure.
I mean, yeah, you don't jump the shark on it. You're like, you're a devil man. But you know what? You don't look like Beelzebub. You look like Brad Pitt, but your skin's red and you got a little tail. Like it's you're a freaking human with red skin. Let's call a spade here. They're not any different. Drow, oh, you know how lithe, badass elves, cool. But you just got jet black skin, white hair, and you're kind of badass, evil looking. Okay, I can relate to that. They're half steps, and so I think when the further you get away from the core of what people can relate to, again going back to that core understanding and this like societal understanding from a fantasy perspective, the further you get away from it, the more you're kind of standing out on a narrow ledge for that getting traction. So
sure, like hence like what are they called, plasmoids or whatever that were introduced in Spelljammer, where you're literally just like an ooze person. You're just like that's a full step away, right?
Yeah, this is my puddle pal. His name is Pete.
Yeah,
he's great.
We had a plasmoid or whatever in one of our games. It was fun. It was fun to like. It was always interesting because be like, oh no, the door's locked. I just go into the door, dude.
I get that. Yeah, it's sometimes it's hard, like especially as like you're running a game. There's you're as a DM. There's a lot of balls you're juggling. You have wackadoo stuff with dude that just slides under the door all the time. You're like, God damn it, can't we just why can't we, like I can't handle all this right now. You got Birdman that can just fly over any fucking gate that we need. Well, I guess that's no longer something I can put in my games, right? Of an understanding of what are things that situations where the group will have to problem solve, will have to come up with a creative idea. If just like Birdman fly, and you're just like, fuck, okay, well, shit, I got to do something else now. It's like, okay, everything's got a roof covered in spikes. Like you just you're making it harder. And I'm not saying don't do it. And that's why I'm saying, like, if you have someone that wants to play an Aarakocra or whatever, your DM really needs to have an understanding, and there needs to be a way to make sure that character is being played by the player, so it feels like there's something unique about them, right? And it's not just in related to dice rolling, but how they approach the world, how they act, and how others act for them. And this is maybe a whole nother discussion, but historically there's just a whole lot of like fantasy racism that goes on in the games, where it's like, well, you got a half orc in your group, so whenever you go into town, everyone's got their pitchforks out. And it's like, well, damn it, like that, you don't have to, it shouldn't be ones and zeros like that either. Right. It's, you have to, but it needs to take place in a setting where the other NPCs, where it's culturally a norm, or there's a reason why they don't like it. And then you get to learn about that story, and you can maybe solve a mystery and help and show that this half orc, he is a really good guy. We know you guys had a really bad experience with that tribe. He's not part of that tribe. He's helped save the daughter from the well, like whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the way I would state it is this. I really am not interested in just like worlds populated by the base fantasy races anymore. Like I've been there and done that like 1,000 times. Okay, literally. I don't think it immediately makes it bad. That's not the statement I'm making. The statement I'm making is I don't personally have any interest in it. I like it when the world is a little more interesting and has weird corners in it and peoples and unusual sort of species and races and just, just general, just peoples, right, are just weird, right?
Right.
And I think that it's good to allow that stuff to happen. Again, I go to the sci-fi example and say, like, in any sci-fi game we played, it would be the expected for the most part, right? Yeah. There would be weird things going on.
That's why you're sci-fiing it up.
That's why you're sci-fiing it up. And I think that we can take a little bit of that sensibility in there. I think if you're a GM, like, and I think Eberron showed this, they introduced these like 4 new, sort of species races, where you want to say, to the world. And a couple of them really did catch.
Yeah.
Right.
And it helps ground you in that setting. That's cool. I really enjoy that.
But they did the work.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's the key. Those things like Warforged are compelling because they have a really compelling story, not just because they're robot people.
Right. It is tied into the setting in the history of this world. And that's what's cool.
Yes.
I can get behind it now. Yep. When they're just in there because the world is filled with all sorts of, crazy people. Would you like to play one? All these different kinds of heritages. Would you like to play one? That's different than tying a few interesting ones to that world. One thing that I like to do is I like to throw, all sorts of weird different groups that the players interact with. And I try to even treat intelligent bad guys as if they could be a player character. So you treat your kobolds, you treat your hobgoblins, you treat your gnolls as if they could have, in a different life, that could have been you, because they have a multitude to them. And if you treat all the NPCs your characters interact with in such a way, you then set up an environment at your table where people are open to thinking about of the variety of races for them to choose from. And then, having the rules for such in the game is a good thing because we can make it happen. Or screw it, we're going to house rule this. We're going to table it. And we're going to say like, let's just, you get this and you get this. This is cool. Play it up, that kind of thing.
I agree. And I would go a step farther and say, like, look, I think you as a GM should be open to your players playing weird things, like allow it to happen, whether it's one person or whether it's freaking everybody in the group. I don't care. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's fair at the same time for you to put the onus on them to then define something about that. Like if they want to bring in Lupin into your game and it's not set in Red Steel, which is where those characters were from, or Mystara, really. Okay. Then I tied it all back to the earlier Mystara discussion. If you want to do that, then have them talk about where they're from and their stuff. Like have them give you some background so that the GM has something to work with to integrate you, right? Have the player go that extra mile to talk about their unusual thing, how they got here and what they are. If they're bringing in something weird that has a culture somewhere else, like the old planar transport thing, the Outlander story, right? The stranger in a strange land. That's fine too, right? Like if you are the rogue modern or stuff like that, then just make sure you understand how your character relates to the fact that they've left behind the one in the prime and the sacred order of Mechanus to be in this place, and that they probably feel some way about that, right? And how everybody else feels about a weird little box walking around the world. And make it real. Have people, if you're the GM, people should comment on it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Not in necessarily a mean way. You don't have to be like joking, like simplistically fantasy racist, as you just talked about, right? I always think about your early Trapped Under Plastic where you had that joke at that I'm fantasy racist or whatever, right? But like, don't make it that simplistic, but like, it should be a statement of like, it should come up.
Right. If you want if you're a player at your table and you want your decisions to matter in the world and to change how the story goes based on what you do, which I think it's safe to say we all do, that's why we play RPGs, then therefore how the character that you choose should impact the world as well. Right. And that, again, it's not about just give an excuse to hate. It's not about like, oh, everyone hates you in town, every town you go into. That's boring and that's trivial and that's dumb and that's going to get real old real quick. Well, let the world interact with you. And also, if you're a box man, you should be overwhelmed by all these organic shapes in this world. Nothing is parallel and nothing makes 90-degree angles. And I'm in a strange world. I'm not used to this. That should be like information overload for you on a day-to-day basis because you are
or something
totally
you always take into account and comment on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's completely foreign to you. Yeah, that foreign creature in a foreign land is a great thing, but you have to act like you're experiencing things for the first time and you're trying to grasp things, and that's a great way to bring your character to life too.
I agree. All right. Well, there we go, John. I think we covered this one.
I think we did it. I think we're moving beyond elves and dwarves, and I'm honestly, I think this conversation made me think a little bit more about being more open and exciting and pushing players to have and play fun, creative characters. Oftentimes, I think my own the negative feelings I had around it was the extra work it put on me as a DM to bring them into the fold. And it's just like, oh gosh, it's another ball to juggle. And it doesn't have to be, especially if you are the player that wants to play one of these unique heritage or races, like just do your GM a favor and set that up, right? Make
it a partnership. If you're going to do it, then you got it. Then you got to do the extra work yourself too, right? Like, it's a partnership.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Gazeboys, for joining us today. We appreciate each and every one of you. This is our 8th episode, and we are still shocked and awed that you are still listening. And for those of you that are new to finding us, welcome. We are glad to have you. Like I said, we've got 7 other episodes for you to catch up on, so you can decide whether we're good, bad, or otherwise. And we're going to be back again before you know it with another new episode. And we've got a whole giant list of hot topics that we are going to cover around the world of tabletop RPGs. Vince very soon is going to Gen Con, so we're going to talk about his experience there. Hopefully I can get to go for my first time next year. We'll be able to revisit this in a year and all the stuff I spent my money on to buy for RPGs and the like. But we'll be back before you know it. Thanks for joining us. Now get out of here, Gazeboids.